working, everyone. And we're live everywhere. All right, let's do this.
All right. Just remember what I've taught you.
What the fuck is that?
Hey, yo.
All right, I guess, grab your noodles and your corgi and your wheels of time and Lord knows whatever else, and we'll see what we can do. Oh man. I guess this is our Halloween episode? Somebody was asking me that earlier today. Are you going to do like a theme thing? Because way back when this was on Zoom, and it was just on Zoom, and I didn't have to worry about copyright strikes, the Christmas episode was Death Metal Christmas, and it was really, really good. So there might be like a Christmas that's not on Twitch, that's just like special and on Zoom, so that I don't have to worry about copyright. But that's like a Christmas decision. But for now, oh man, just for now, we're going to start this week's delightful event. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, anarchists, writers, makers, doers, enjoyers of waffle irons, dog enthusiasts, not creepy people who can understand the exact way you're supposed to lick envelopes, people who like sending original postal mail, people who actually still go pick up postal mail, enjoyers of podcasts, enjoyers of fine cheese, anybody who's ever tried to fix a loose tea bag before it totally disintegrates in a cup of tea, and most importantly, the comrades. Hello, and welcome to the Writers' Chat for October the 27th, the very last Wednesday in October. I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're well. I hope you're safe and happy and warm if it's cold where you are and cool if it's hot where you are. It is wonderful to be right back here, right in your ears one more time. So, yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm feeling pretty all right. I'm totally, you can't tell, but I'm totally doing the heavy metal t-shirt and 90s grunge cardigan look. So I'm in a good mood. And I can't wait to talk to you for the next 2 hours. And if this is the first time you're checking this out, thank you for putting me in your ears. It's wonderful to be here. And just in general, I'm going to spend the next 2 hours answering questions from all corners of the writing sphere. All manner of things. All different kinds of creatives at all different stages in creation. It is my absolute pleasure to continue to do this over and over because being me, talking about writing never really stops. So we're starting tonight, though. I don't know if you're watching this video either on YouTube, hey YouTube, or on Twitch, hey Twitch. Really, the only people getting, it's kind of shafted on the visuals is Zoom, hey Zoom. But at least everybody's all in this together. There's some delightful new graphics. So, yay, graphics. We're starting tonight, though, with a question from Zoom. Because, it's a question. And it's important. Hello, hi, it's so wonderful to see all of you here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing this to be your edutainment destination. That's a terrible name. Let's never use that name again. But thank you for being here. I hope to, not bore you. All right, let's get into it. Here's the question. Hey, John, how do I prevent my mental health issues from taking over and stopping my writing dead in its tracks? What happens sometimes is that right in the middle of a sentence, I just stop. And it takes forever, days, weeks, months, whatever, to kind of get back on track because of insert particular mental health issue here. Are there any tips? Do you have any tips to prevent that? Yeah, I do. Come here. Lean a little closer. I don't want to prevent it. There's the magic trick. I don't want you to think about this in terms of prevention or distance or some kind of like warding off. We're not trying to ignore or resist insert mental health problem here. What I want you to do is accept it. And I know that sounds terrible, and I know that sounds easier said than done, because any number of mental health things, it's never just as simple as, ticking a box and calling it a day. I know. But it's okay to get stopped by your anxiety. It's okay to get stopped, through a wave of depression, or if you're me, getting completely, absolutely stuck on and obsessed with something that distracts you entirely from doing anything. It's completely okay when this happens. It does not. It never will, but it definitely now does not mean you have failed as a writer or you will fail as a writer. It just means that right then, in that moment, with those seconds, you're not writing. And that's okay. It really is. Because sometimes, despite all our best efforts, we do actually have to stop and manage some mental health things and take care of ourselves so that we can be more productive later, whenever later might be. That's not always easy for people to reconcile. That's not always easy for people to deal with, because we get kind of locked into this chase, this idea of like, no, I got to keep moving, man. If I keep moving, they can't, the monsters snipping at my heels can't get me. The anxiety won't get me if I keep writing. And yeah, I suppose that's technically true, but all the same, like, you're just delaying a bigger crash later. If we let's use a non-mental health metaphor. Let's say you and I go get absolutely hammered. We just drink and drink and drink and drink. I used to be very good at it, so we presumably would be there for a while. We drink and we drink and we drink and we drink, and then all of a sudden we decide, hey, we don't want to be hungover later. We better just keep drinking. All we're doing is delaying the inevitable hangover. All we're doing is delaying dealing with the consequences for our decisions. I don't want you to try and prevent the stoppage as if, oh my God, no, this is not who I am. This is somehow destroying me. It's who you are. You have these issues. I have issues. That person over there has issues. Statistically, the vast majority of us have issues. It's just a matter of whether or not we recognize that we have them. And it doesn't reduce your humanity. It doesn't make you less you. It doesn't, it's not fun. It's not like the best way to spend a Tuesday morning or something. But your writing is important and you're important, and taking care of your mental health and choosing to prioritize that periodically for days, weeks, months, however long, so that you're able to, when the clouds lift and when you surface and feel more like you, in those moments, that's where you can capitalize on what you were doing. We can't guarantee, at least not to the best of my knowledge, we can't guarantee when those moments will be. Sometimes it's harder than others. Sometimes some are short, sometimes some are long, and that's fine. It's terrible, it's awful, it's unpleasant, it's embarrassing, it's awkward, it's humiliating, it's frustrating, it's angering, it's all these things. But it's okay. It's really just okay. It's unfortunate in some cases, but sometimes that means you're going to have to stop and sit down and manage the anxiety, figure out some kind of coping mechanism or strategy to help you feel more comfortable or safe or protected or content or at ease in the present moment. But your creativity is not going anywhere. Yeah, you totally stopped in the middle of the sentence. I get it. I super get it. And maybe when you pick it back up, whenever that might be, you will pick it up exactly from there, or maybe it's just pick it up from the next sentence. It's not a race. You don't have to rush. It's not going anywhere. Your creativity isn't disappearing or evaporating. It's just not. It's all right. You do the best you can, when you can, however you can. And there's no real benefit. There's no tangible benefit to really like riding your own ass and forcing yourself to either, ward it off and avoid it or deny it or push through it. Like, eventually in the end, it all catches up to you. So why not plan for that? I'm not saying give up being creative. Nobody's saying give up being creative. What I'm saying is it's a part of you. It's like, in some ways, breaking a limb or knowing that you've got the flu. And I know I'm making a terrible equivalence between like physical injury and mental health. But at the same time, with those tangibly visible things, we know they're there. We can feel them. We endure them. We persist through them. And we can compensate for them in our practice. You got to do the same thing here. It's who you are. Why would you want to avoid being who you are? So the best thing you can do, rest when you can. And when you have the energy again, go back and do your best to attack it with the strength you have. Sure, there, yes, as Rob points out in the chat, yes, there is some value for some people, not everybody, but there is some value for recognizing that part of your process includes your anxiety or includes your particular issues. I know for me, working with, around, and through, and by, and for all my issues really helped shape how I do what I do. And the longer I tried to avoid it through delightful substances that I miss dearly, the worse it would get when it was a problem. So I will totally admit that I didn't entirely answer your question, but I wanted to bring this to your attention instead. Thank you, by the way, for being the first question I can use for the official brand new Questions from Discord graphic. Thanks. All right, now we're going to march on to the other questions. Question number 1, which by comparison looks like super tiny font. Question number 1. Does a theme have to run through the whole book, or can I have it in just half the book? Yes. And yes. Some themes, depending on what they are, and depending on how you frame the story, need to run the length of the book. Some themes, again, depending on what they are and how you've framed them in the story, can only or need to only be in half the book. The problem is, here's the red flag. You don't want to have your only theme show up only in the second half of the book and have nothing in the first half. Because that's going to make, no matter what that theme is, you could have the pitch perfect theme in the best representation with, like the best writing of your life. But if we go half a book where there's no real sense of theme, and then all of a sudden we get to the back half of the book and the theme shows up in a big way, it's always going to feel forced. Likewise, having a theme that only shows up in the first half of the book and then nothing in the back half of the book is going to come across as disorganized and even a little lazy. As if, we really planned and overthought the first half, but then we reached this one tipping point in the story and we just were like, I don't know, I got to finish. I'm just going to start mashing keys and see what happens. So if you're going to split the book in half thematically and have one theme in the first half and a second theme in the second half, that's fine. Just make sure that the gap between the two, there's a little, we don't want there to be like one theme ends on page, I'm going to make numbers up, 101, and the next theme picks up on a page 102. We want to kind of hide that seam a little bit. We want to kind of smooth it out so it looks as though they're whole contiguous things. But you want to make sure there's a theme in the part of the story the reader is reading. Whether that runs one theme the whole book or you split it up and break it up into however many pieces, always make sure there is a theme. Awesome question. On we go. Nope, that's not right. That's right. John, what is persistence and how does it work with characters? Persistence is a really easy concept. It basically means that the consequences of your actions follow you. So if you have your character get into a fight and they, I don't know, they get punched in the face and they get a black eye. Persistence says that they've got a black eye on the next page. It doesn't magically go away when the scene is done. It doesn't have like poof and then it's gone sort of consequences. Persistence means the consequences hang out going forward in the story. This is going to help create a sense of, to some degree, realism for your characters. Is going to give this real sense that, oh, what happens to the character matters because it keeps showing up. So if you have a character, absolutely just, beaten up and left for dead, they're wounded badly, that woundedness, that injury, it isn't just going to be there when we need it to be. It's going to be there throughout the whole story. It adds a layer of tension. It adds a layer of complexity. The story is going to benefit from persistence. It's also really useful outside of, adult fiction when we're talking about like early readers, where you want your early reader to have an understanding that the things that were true on one page are also true on the next page. So that if we have a story about hopping on pop for whatever reason, we know that the rhymes we just heard or read on the one page, we're still going to have that same kind of rhyming idea. We're still going to have the same kind of story. If we have green eggs and ham, we didn't like them on page 6 and we still don't like them on page 9. That's also persistence. This is one of those things where when you run into a writer who's really attached to their character because they have an idea, and they're not so much like in the movie version, it would be played by so-and-so. That's not what I mean. I mean more like my character is perfect and the bestest, and I love thinking about my character, and I love thinking about being successful with this character, and I'm afraid or I feel bad when I have to hurt my character as if my character is a real person because I don't have any sort of effective imaginative boundary within myself. So that's where you run into persistence that's kind of temporary. Like, I don't want to hurt my character. Yeah, you do. That's what the story is. You got to give them conflict and tension and dynamism. And if you're unwilling to hurt your character, what are you doing? It's going to make a difference. It's one of the fundamental story tools. Good question. On we go with 3. And this time I'll remember to push the 1 button before I push the next. Like that. John, I have a love triangle between my 3 point of view characters. How can I resolve this? I'd like to point out for a minute that when I posed this when I wrote this question originally on the Discord, somebody was very nice enough to kindly point out that if your characters all have hands, they can resolve their own love triangle themselves. And yes, that is one of the actual options for resolving a 3-person love triangle. You just hook them all up with each other. Totally legit. Nothing wrong with that at all. Because I don't know what you mean when you say resolve. Because is resolve just everybody gets some? We just learn to have a polycule, as most people should? Or is this something like, oh, well, how do I mean, your question's vague. How do we pick? Yes, your characters presumably have 2 hands each. Your problem is solved. Yeah, I'm totally down for that. I got no problem with that. That's a great answer. Love that answer. Thank you for providing it. It's awesome. But if we're trying to suggest like all my characters are in love with each other, how do I resolve it? Well, it depends on what the point of the triangle is. Like, so in a triangle, just so that we're clear on love triangle structure, you have a deciding character called a chooser or a decider or a decision maker or a choice character. And they have to choose between the other people, however many people. And they are referred to as the options or the choices. Option A, option B, option C. You could have as many as you want. But the idea is that each of the options is distinct from each other. And if you were to take all the options and Dragon Ball Z fuse them into one character, and you made up like a hybrid character that was a little bit of A and a little bit of B and a little bit of C, you'd have the ideal perfect single partner. But because we have taken these ideal perfect traits and broken them off into their own individual pieces, the tension in the triangle is, well, I could totally go with A because they have traits 1, 2, and 3, but I could go with B because they have traits 4, 5, and 6. when ultimately what the character should be after is a single character who has traits 1 through 6, but they don't have one in the story. So my question back to you for this is, what are you trying to do with your characters? Is it about that you're choosing character making a choice, and you just don't want to make a choice because you're anticipating what you think the reader will like better? Okay, fun fact, the reader's going to like whatever you put forth in the most clear, dynamic way. So whichever one you go for, that's the one the reader's going to like. Why? Because that's what the book is. You wrote it. They might have, big, giant fandom level designs that, I want to make sure I get this language right because I'm sure somebody somewhere is going to get on me for it. Some people might believe that, it's not an OTP. It is instead, they ship other people. I really want to make sure I'm getting this right because it's a level of nerd interaction it's waters I don't swim in. So how do you want to resolve it? If it's just, hey, how does my character choose one of the people? What's the plot? Like, what are you hoping to get? What's your character's end state? Like, do we want that character to be a better person? Then you pick the better partner. Are we willing to, like our tough, hardworking person has to learn a valuable lesson about loosening up so they're going to fall in love with the stubbly rebel? Or is this somebody who has to kind of put away the immature, childish things and move forward with somebody mature and capable? Or whatever your cliche dynamics might be. I don't know. But you resolve it by making a choice. And you resolve it by having the choice, once the choice made, go back and look at the question number 2 for persistence and have that choice have rippling effects for other characters. So if our choice character chooses A, great. What happens to B? What happens to C and D and E and Q and all the other choices? What happens to the dynamic between A and B? All right, so let's use a hypothetical example and then we'll move on. Let's suppose we are telling a teenage supernatural romance. And let's suppose we have a really blank slate character who is suddenly in love for whatever reason with a guy who just can't seem to keep his shirt on and another character who doesn't really want to be in the movie. How then do we set this love triangle up so that it's an actual triangle? Well, normally in the hands of the characters, what they would do is there'd be a reason for your choosing character, our blank slate, to realize that there's a benefit to hanging out with the shirtless one and a benefit to hanging out with the disaffected, disenfranchised one, and that ultimately they need to spend time with each before they can make an effective choice. Because if they just sit around and go, no, I'm on team first person, the disaffected one, no matter what, you are absolutely kicking the other half of your triangle to the curb. We'd like to avoid that, no matter how many muffins and jorts, which is a comment entirely for anybody who follows me, who supports me on Patreon. No matter what the muffins and jorts crowd says, the minute your choosing character locks in their choice, there better be consequences, significant consequences between the dynamic between your choice and your unchosen character, as well as your unchosen character and the character making the choice in the first place. It's a big deal to not get picked. That's how you resolve it. That's what you deal with. Yeah, if you really want to get into how to build an effective love triangle, and you're a member of the Patreon, which is patreon.com/JohnHelpsYouCreate, go jump on the Patreon and check out all the stuff I did when I covered the entire Twilight series, because I spent 12, 13 hours, maybe more than that, talking about just how to build a love triangle. So super helpful. Good stuff. All right. Now, we're going to load some more graphics. Are you ready? We're going to get real fancy, professional. Ready? Oh my God, there's a graphic for questions from chat now. I'm giving myself air horns. Because damn it, I deserve air horns for actually having graphics when I say, hey, I should make graphics for this stuff. So now, Twitch. Zoom. Zoom. And YouTube, if you have questions, this would be one of those moments where you can ask them. I've mentioned in the past that a series Bible and outline is a huge asset for editing and pitching. Totally is. Let's say I've already written my first or second draft without one. Cool. Good for you for writing a first and second draft. What are some good tips to keep in mind when reverse engineering it? Okay, first of all, nobody's going to notice. So you don't have to engineer it so that it's like hyper super complete. Second of all, it's always going to be easier to reverse engineer than start, because you can just go back through the individual story once it's whole and very quickly identify the sections. Like, you can walk through your plot once the whole story's done. You can list out all your characters because the story's done. You can break down the world building stuff in chapter by chapter order because all the chapters are done. There's a nice organization to a completed manuscript, and all a story Bible, all an asset book, all a series Bible is going to help you do is corral that information into one place. So the nice thing about reverse engineering it is that you can go chapter by chapter. And okay, chapter 1, great. What characters are there? What's the plot? What world building rules do I introduce? Sometimes you're going to have a lot to say because it's a very big, important chapter, like a climax chapter. And other times it's just going to be, in chapter 6, there's only one conversation. Cool, move on. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything other than a quick roadmap for you to refer to when you're going to go forward and, let's say, pitch. You want to be able to have different arrows in the quiver to draw from. Okay, I'm going to mention this from chapter 10 and mention this from chapter 2 and then mention this from chapter 22. There's a real advantage to doing it after the fact. That said, the reason why we don't tell everybody to automatically always do it after the fact is that sometimes people come to these things completely indecisive. And sitting down and organizing their stuff in advance helps them make those decisions. That's really the metric for whether or not you start one and then start writing, or you write and then go forward. I'll tell you a fun secret. Fun secret time. 99% of the time, I have always reverse engineered them. Because it's one of those things where it's going to be easier for me to just work backwards. Chapter by chapter, character by character, rule by rule. I know what sections I want. I know what I'm looking to say. I'm looking for the gold mine of pieces I can put together a pitch with. So I can pick and choose from the complete story rather than just what do I have so far. I can pick and choose and come up with the most constructive set of tools for building a pitch. Because that's really all the Bible and the outline stuff is for. It's just for whatever the next step is. So in our case, it'll be pitching and sales copy, or querying and marketing, or all of the above. So we only really ever need to think about one step ahead in our process. So whatever tools help you get confident about that next step, write them down in a single document and call it a day. Great question. Now over here, in this other column that is the Twitch chat, there's another question. What's the difference between persistence and continuity? It's the same thing with a different label. It's exactly the same thing. Continuity and persistence are synonymous. Generally, the use is that continuity includes the actions. Like, when the scene started, I was moving left to right, and when the scene ends, I have ended on the right rather than the left. And persistence is just the consequences of actions. I got punched in the face, and my eye is still swollen. But they're essentially the same thing. Now, is there a question over here in YouTube? If I click the YouTube button, do I get another thing? No. That's okay. There wasn't a question over there. You're very welcome. Thank you for asking your question. And Jesse, over in Zoom, did I answer your question? Do you feel satisfied with that answer? Gives me a lot to work with. Awesome. I love when I can give people lots to work with. It makes my day. All right. Any other questions, or shall we march on to question 4? I promise you some of these questions are spicy. I really and truly promise you some of the stuff's like legit spicy eventually. I just can't remember where they are on the list. Other questions? Anybody? New people? It's totally okay to have questions. You're not going to be dumb. You can totally ask a question even if you think like a million people ask it every week, because I guarantee you they don't. It's okay. Take your time. It's cool. On we go. We can circle back. Is that the business term? Whatever. On we go to question 4, a business question. Hey, John, are business cards dead? Kinda. That's really my best answer. So the function of a business card way back in the day when we could meet each other, in person, in the before times, the function of the business card was to give a brief introduction and a reminder to somebody after the fact. Hey, you're so-and-so and such, and you've written XYZ. I vaguely remember meeting you while standing next to you at a bar or something. And I think in terms of that capacity, given that I honestly think it's going to be a while before we transition back to the same level of in-person physical interaction, I think the traditional business card is pretty dead, which is a shame because I was really, cranking out some really awesome physical material, which is also okay because there's a global paper and cardboard shortage. So let's not ruin the, planet even further just because I want to have a card on it that says, thank you very much for talking to me. Oh, I'm getting notifications of subscribers. Thank you for subscribing. I greatly appreciate that. What I don't think is dead in terms of business cards are the digital ones. What's a digital business card, you ask? So let's suppose there is a certain size graphic. See? Subscriber. Thank you. Means the world to me. There is a certain size graphic. I believe it is, I want to say it's 1200 by 570. If you Google, I'm going to use Twitter as my example. Twitter graphic, no crop. It'll give you the maximum measurement. If you want to actually wait a second, and I'll give you intermission music while I go look it up. I might actually do that. Nope, that's not how you spell that word, John. I know this is really like amazing. You think I would have written this stuff down. It is, in fact, 1200 by 675. So if you create a graphic, and you'll notice that if you go back through and you look at my Twitter account, all of the hype graphics for chats and streams are 1200 by 675. In that size space, especially on Twitter, you can put whatever the hell you want, and it will show up without crop and without being smushed, just as is in somebody's feed. You can use that space as a business card. You can promote whatever you want. You can introduce yourself. You can say what's going on. You can highlight an upcoming thing you're doing. I think in that capacity, the digital or virtual business card is still really, really viable. And even as we move into more digital, like extra digital space, where we have, a combination of QR codes and cryptocurrencies and all different manner of hoopla, I think the virtual version is really very effective. My first Writers Con, I made hand-drawn, nice to meet you cards with social media and little doodles of dragons and hawks and things. People love them. Yes, because you made an effort that most are unwilling to do, and that helps you stand out, and that's really that doesn't surprise me at all about you, but it's certainly one of those things that will help people remember you, which is generally the main function of a business card. So, good job doing that. The virtual version, the digital version, would have, depending on the level and the scope and the complexity, would have much the same effect. I think business cards need to be, much like everything else, need to be reimagined in order for them to kind of come back to the same degree they were years previous. Great question. On we go. What's the difference between transgressive and provocative fiction? Okay, well, The easy answer here is one is a genre and the other is an adjective. Transgressive fiction is a genre. It specifically refers to fiction that presses against some kind of societal norm or rule. What rule? I don't know. That's up to the author. But it pushes back against it. It challenges it. It defies it. It ideally makes the reader question the validity of that rule. And it makes the reader generally want to be somebody who hopefully crosses that rule. Gets a toe out of line, colors outside the line, rocks the boat, or other. Yes, A Clockwork Orange is a great example of transgressive literature, and certainly better than the go-to transgressive literature example that everybody since like the mid-90s uses, which is Fight Club. But generally transgressive fiction, and there is transgressive nonfiction, but transgressive media is media that just pushes against boundaries. In little ways, in big ways, in combined big and little ways, it's just doing some pushing. It's trying to poke holes and question, and not so much in like that obnoxious, like 20-year-old white guy contrarian kind of way. More like I, the author, am questioning the validity of this idea that we hold dear. Clockwork Orange book is better than that book? Sure, yeah. Oh, yes. Is Clockwork Orange the book better than the movie? Yes. Movie's not bad. I found the movie long, but I was also not sober when I saw it. But the decision you make as an author to push against a boundary, both in terms of how you push against the boundary and what that boundary is, can be very, what's the word I want to use? Engaging? You can really make a statement. You can really get on a platform. You can really do something. You can really wield your words and use your space effectively. It is really, really a good idea. That's different, though, than provocative fiction. Provocative fiction is, provocative is an adjective. Just like thrilling or dangerous or mysterious or sexy or any number of the other real kind of bland, overworked words people use in press releases and queries and pitches and elsewhere throughout the hashtag writing community in order to make it sound like their stuff is so different from everybody else's despite it containing all the same stuff as everybody else's. Provocative fiction, just on its face by definition, is fiction that provokes a feeling or emotion. It makes you feel something, as all fiction should. But unlike fiction, which is just provocative by definition, this is stuff that is intentionally provocative. We're not really pushing boundaries. We're not really questioning the establishment or making us reconsider a certain thing. But we're certainly, just trying to we're stirring the pot, if we can use a metaphor there. We're just trying to get somebody feeling, but not necessarily thinking, I think is probably the best way to, we want them, because if we were transgressive, we'd want them thinking, we'd want them really questioning, like, here's the boundary, I'm making a visual, here's the line, I want to get you past the line, I want you questioning why it's a line in the first place. In your opinion, 50 Shades of Grey is provocative, but not transgressive. Yes. Going by our definition, 50 Shades of Grey is not transgressive. It was marketed to be transgressive. And for a lot of people, the fact that it existed was itself transgressive because, oh my God, grown adults like sex, you guys. But by and large, it's mostly provocative. It's built around titillation. It's built around just trying to get somebody to like, tee-hee, I can't believe I like this thing, tee-hee, tee-hee. And there's a chasm, there's a gulf of difference between the two. One is not necessarily inherently better unless you're trying to go for one. If you are aiming transgressive, you don't want to settle for provocative. And if you're going for provocative and you hit transgressive, you've gone too far. But by and large, they are... the danger here is saying that transgressive is the extreme in fiction. Because ultimately, I will wave my black flag for a moment, brothers and sisters, and tell you that eventually... boundaries are to be eliminated because, boundaries are dumb and they're usually a sense of control or theft because it's all capitalism and colonialism and patriarchy. Beyond that, though, transgressive fiction is so often labeled as the extreme, and it's, like extra edgy, like edgelord edgy, like internet edgy, and it doesn't need to be. You can read, like, you want transgressive nonfiction, like David Graeber's work on debt is transgressive because it makes you, or it encourages you to reconsider how debt is defined and purposed. That's transgressive because it pushes against a line. It's a good book. It's a long book. It's better as an audiobook, but it's not exactly like this crazy scintillating tale that, crackles on the page with some kind of sexual electricity between two made up characters. It's a nonfiction story. It's just history and facts, but that in itself can be transgressive. Save your provocation for your fiction and let transgressiveness be the vanguard. Put it out on the edge. Get it out on Front Street. And over time, a strong, clear voice authorially will take you far in transgressive fiction. Great question. Love this question. On we go again. Oh my God. It's gentle advice. Gentle advice. Help. I published my book 2 weeks ago, but sales have slowed down. How can I pick them back up? All right. I need you to do me a thing first. Before we get into the answer, I'm going to need you to sit down. And if you're sitting down, I'm going to need you to take a slow, deep breath. Okay? Because you can't pick them back up the way they were before. You can pick them up and do it differently going forward, but there is no point in trying to chase day one results on day 15. It's a different day. We can reinvigorate those sales by engaging in a different marketing campaign, by coming at marketing and pitching and getting the word out across our same platform, but with a different message. But more likely, we want to use a different platform and a different strategy so that we're not repeating different words to the same audience who might already have made the purchase. Because, yeah, it's great that we have like a plan for day one sales, and then a week later we send out a reminder email to the same group. But after a while, like, how many more times are you going to remind people who maybe already bought the book that, hey, they should go buy the thing? This is why it is often to your benefit to think about not only how you talk about your book, but to whom and when you talk about the book. Example, if we have a book, we'll call it Book X. We have a Book X, and we know that it very firmly sits in its genre. We want to make sure that we're really proud of that genre. We like that genre. We think it really typifies the genre. So we're going to dedicate our first initial sales push towards the people who love that genre, whether that's through targeted ads or whether through a newsletter or a podcast or YouTube video or book review or who knows what. But we're aiming at them first because they're the biggest block and because they're presumably going to be the most active for it. And they're going to be our first initial surge in sales, which is going to be a number. I don't know how much. It's going to be a number. That's going to be dependent on how well you've laid the groundwork up to that point. But time passes. We can't go back to that first group and expect the same response twice. There are diminishing returns. People who already bought a book aren't very likely to buy the same book a week later. It's just not that anymore. Now, you go back like 60 years, 70 years, people totally did that stuff, but it was completely a different era, and it was completely stupid when they did it then. It'd be even worse now. But what do? We need to pick these sales back up. Well, what other platforms, what other vehicles, what other recipients could we reach out to? Right, we wrote this newsletter, we created this YouTube video, we did this thing, and we reached this first group. Do we have a second group? Do we have a third group? Do we have a different way of reaching them that we can, give them the link to how the first group was reached? But because it's a different group, any reach we do to a new group is essentially new to them. There might be some overlap, but we're counting on the fact that the majority is going to be new all the way around. So what can we give these people to inform them of this thing they don't know? We just don't want to repeat the same thing 5 times. That's a little lazy, and it can get irritating if there is overlap, and that overlapped crowd can get kind of vocal. We want to try to avoid that. And we also just don't want to give the impression to other people who are using us as a role model. We don't want to give the impression that it's totally okay just to copy and paste and copy and paste and copy and paste, rather than make a concerted, individuated effort every time we need to talk about something. So we can pick these sales up by approaching a different group of people in a different way. I don't know what group you're talking about. I don't know how you want to approach them. But I'm desperately hoping, so that I can give you this strong answer to this question, that you have more than just one group of people in mind. If you need to stop and figure out who that second group is, take the time and do that. The book's still going to tick along. It's just not going to tick along to the same degree as it did on day 1. Day 1 and day 2 are big sales days for a reason. We can't always assume or guarantee that days 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, however many, are going to be like day 1 and 2. Sometimes it happens. Your book hits your book just hits at a moment. Your book gets the right kind of support underneath it, and it's sometimes dumb luck. Sometimes it's the right kind of person just picking it up at the right moment, and all of a sudden you explode across social media or whatever. Sometimes for good, but sometimes for ill, Everybody gets to be, in the barrel on a particular day. You just have to hope it's not you. But we should have a plan so that it's not just, well, I have 20 people I can definitely send it to, and then I'm done. You want to make sure you've got persons 21 and up, 21 to 50, 21 to 95, 25 to 2,000 in mind as well. And then treat that second group as though it's the first time. I know they're your second group, but to them, they're their own first group. So pick up the excitement, get that motivation. Hey, new group of people, check out this book. Now, that's going to possibly be a little taxing. That might be a little emotionally challenging, especially if you have like 4, 5, and 6 groups, and you're kind of feeling like you're banging your head against the wall, hoping that, somebody somewhere in group 6 is going to be just as hype as somebody was in group 1. And this is why I'm again going to tell you, stop chasing those results from day 1 and day 2 and just make an effort to catalyze new sales. Don't worry about the numbers. You are not your sales numbers. You are not your metrics. You are not your bar graph. You are not your pie chart. You are not your whatevers. Just get the word out about the material, promote it, make sure people know it's available and how to access it. And over time, given the strength of a number of other things you're doing, marketing-wise, production-wise, etc., you will sell copies of books. It's going to take more time than you think. That's how you pick things back up. And of course, as per usual, if you want individual help, come on back, give me some concrete stuff, and I'll give you a very specific, concrete answer. But for now, pick it up by just taking a new tack with a new group of people and a new message. Good stuff. Hey, guess what time it is? It's time for more questions from chat. Oh, man. Anybody? Twitch? Zoom? YouTube? Questions? Big things, little things. Literally anything. Does not even have to do anything with writing. You can ask me what I had for dinner. That'd be totally great. Right up there with, hey, John, how do I write a 4th book in a series when I was only planning 3? Anything you want to ask me. Did I enjoy watching Violet Evergarden? No. Sorry. I tried. I really tried. It just wasn't my jam. I tried. Would translating a book into a different language be a way to market to a new audience? Yes. Because it's a different language and it's a different group of readers. Yes, it would absolutely. My suggestion, get help with the translation. Because while we are, pretty able to dump things into software, or if we passively speak the language, we're able to kind of make the words work, but the grammar can sometimes be a little wonky. So kind of keep an eye on that. But yes, absolutely. Stick your stuff in a new language. That's a new audience for you. It brings its own sort of pitfalls, because then it turns into, well, how do I market this? Because it's not always going to be the same kind of marketing, because some audiences in some other languages may, on the basis of what that language is and where those people are located, they may restrict your content. I'm thinking of example for something maybe like Egypt, or any of the countries that are fairly tight-fisted when it comes to fiction. Not necessarily a bad thing to market to them, but it can be tricky in order to navigate those, what's the best word I want to use? Potential incidents. Yeah, but yes, absolutely. Translate into a new language, new audience. Awesome. How are the cats doing? They're doing really well. They're doing really, really well. Everything is, they're both healthy. They're both enjoying food. Life's good with the cats, man. Life's good with the cats. Thanks for asking. I appreciate that. From a career standpoint, would it be more beneficial to self-pub or go traditional? You mean like right now, like today? Okay. There is a global paper and cardboard shortage. There is an average shipping delay of a minimum of 61 business days. So it's going to take on average, 61 days longer for a book printed in one place to reach something that will distribute it somewhere else. And that's assuming there is paper and cardboard upon which to print or cover that physical book. Does that sound? Yeah, it's at least 61 on average. Some places it's 46. Some places it's 231. I think the outlying oceanic territories, it's around 200. But the vast majority of places, it's in the 60s to 70s. But if it's going to take that long to get a physical thing, that's not even counting mailing it. That's it coming from printer to you so that you can mail it. 61 days extra to you, plus how much time it takes to mail. So if it's going to take that long, and there's a possibility of not having enough paper, which means it'll only get delayed until there is more paper, if there is ever going to be more paper, depending on what kind of grade of paper you're looking for. Does that sound like you want to lean on a traditional system that prioritizes physical product? Or do you think it would be more beneficial to adapt and move to a more digital-first format where you could control not only distribution, but also the speed, marketing, and budget? I believe you have your answer. What was my secret to building my daily writing habit? I have to laugh because there's a polite answer and there's an impolite answer. So I'm going to give them both, because of course I'm going to give them both, but we're going to start with the polite one first. I am remarkably stubborn. I am painfully stubborn. I am annoyingly stubborn. And I am exactly one of those people who has to do a thing sometimes the hard way in order to learn a lesson. And I am somebody who, if you tell me I can't do a thing, barring it being a physical impossibility for me, I will attempt to do it until I reach the conclusion I can't. You telling me I can't do a thing is about the same as you telling me that you have, extra macaroni in the fridge if I'm hungry. So I got real stubborn about writing every day because I got told, John, you don't have the discipline, focus, or patience to write every day. And I thought, I'll show you. So then I did it. And I got good at it. And I like doing it. I still like doing it. Only now, instead of writing fiction, now I'm writing like the architecture and material that supports this whole business. So I'm still writing every day. And when the newsletter gets relaunched, that's where a new avenue of writing is going. But yeah, I started doing it because people were like, oh no, John, you can't do it that way. You don't have the discipline. Well, I hate to tell you this. I have loads of discipline. I have an obnoxious amount of discipline. And I'm very proud of it. But I don't talk about it so much because it's really only impactful to me. Your day does not get better or worse just because I'm disciplined over here. But my consistent secret was, I said I'm going to do a thing. I'm going to do this thing so that it's done. And then I have the rest of the day to myself. Or I have the rest of my day for the other things I want to do. Or I need to get this writing done before, I'll make up a time, before 10 a.m. because I have a thing I want to do at 11. There's somebody I have to call, something I want to talk to, something I'm checking out, I'm going to the movies, whatever it might be. I can, over time, I have been able to, and I still do it, only now it's way more subtle, it's work time. Okay. Music goes on, cat gets parked on the desk, phone goes on airplane mode sometimes, or sometimes the phone just stays in the other room and I get up and I walk and check it periodically. But I just built myself a system where I only have the option to do the thing, the writing, or I'm going to go over there and do nothing. And the writing's not going to get done. And then I have to deal with that feeling of like, oh God, I could skip a day now, but I'm going to end up having to do double time later because I'll have that day's work plus the stuff I skipped out on. And I just don't want to do that to myself. So rather than like get deep into theory, it was just a matter of being practical. I could spend 2 hours now and write. And then I have the rest of the day for anything else I want to do at whatever pace I want to do it because the work will have already been done. Now, maybe that comes from growing up as a kid and being told that I wasn't allowed to do anything until my homework was done. I don't know. Who knows? But maybe. Or maybe it just comes down to if I eat my vegetables, I can eat the rest of the good stuff on my plate. Who knows? That's the polite version. Impolite version, if you get all your work done early, you can spend the rest of the day high and drunk. And it's way better. So the sooner I get the work done, the rest of the day is a wash. That's exactly how I built like the first 10 years of this business. Get all the work done crazy early, do the absolute opposite of work for long stretches of time. That's what I did. Do I recommend part of that? Not really. You end up spending more time securing the illegal narcotics than you do actually consuming them or getting other work done. But yeah, the work's not going to get done unless you do it, Rob. So you put your ass in the chair because if it's important to you, you will make time for it. Whether that's, heroin, pills, booze, video games, porn, whatever. So if the writing's important to you because you say it's important to you, not because you have some kind of pie in the sky fantasy about like 10 years from now, no pie in the sky here. You say the writing's important to you. Prove it. If it's important to you, go do it. Go make time for it. Food and video games. I understand. I understand. I'm an addict. I get it. So, if it's important to you, you make time for it. Whether that's food, video games, writing, watching TV, talking about the same two things with 10 friends, whatever. So it comes down to questioning what's important to you. You keep saying something is, what are you going to do about it? That's exactly how I did it. It's how I still do it. Only now, since I'm not spending 12 hours trying to get unsober, I have way more free time because now the writing gets done in the first 6 hours of my day And if I don't have anybody to talk to or anything, oh man, I can start doing a ton of other stuff. It's pretty great some days. Great question. Excellent. Thank you for asking it. Other questions? I'll make sure I got all the questions from Zoom. Yeah. Cool. All right, on we go then. Question number 7. The spicy one. I'm so glad. Okay. Question number 7. John, why do you think so many people want to write memoirs? Okay. All right. Come here. Come here. Lean in. I'm going to whisper this to you so that you understand. Everybody thinks they're the most important person in any story they're telling. Everybody likes to be the hero. Everybody thinks their life is absolutely so super significant and so super teachable in terms of something that their memoir is going to have such significant difference from the next person. That and memoir classes are pitched to non-writers as being a very easy thing to do because you're essentially writing about your life, and who's the best expert on your life but you? Memoirs for a very long time were a very popular sort of entry point into writing. Oh, I'm just going to write a memoir. Okay. The downside, the danger in writing a memoir is that it's real hard because it's not just a recounting. It's not just like a text vlog. You know, today I did this and then I did that. And it's got to have a point, right? There's got to be a theme to it. There's got to be some structure to it. There has to be a lesson you're imparting or an example you're giving or some part of life you're illustrating because you've learned something critical. And a lot of people don't, a lot of people seem to lack those things because they've done stuff. They've lived a long time. They've accomplished many professional accomplishments. They've gone places and seen things. But by and large, it's hard to transform that into something other people can universally look at and go, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Which is why so often we reserve, I'm making air quotes, reserve the idea of memoirs for celebrities. Well, they're celebrities. They have to be a big deal because of something. So they must have something to say. Like a Kardashian or something. I don't know. They got naked on a VHS cassette, or their dad was a lawyer and now it's a big deal. Or they drove that basketball player crazy. Who knows? Memoirs are still viable. They're still really good, but it's way more important that you have a theme to them or a lesson you're trying to get across, more so than a recounting of funny anecdotes. One, because funny anecdotes is literally a different genre in writing. And two, people come to memoirs because they're looking for a theme, because they're looking to take something from somebody else's life and put it in their own. They're looking for a theme. Great question. Slightly spicy. On we go. Question 8. What's the most thing? Geez, John. What's the most important thing I should focus on when I start my third draft? That it should be the last draft you write, which is the same thing you think when you do your 4th draft or your 5th draft or your 7th draft or your 22nd draft. Once you get out of the first draft, your goal for the second draft is, I'm going to make this better. And then every draft thereafter, from post-second onward, this is it. This is the draft where I lock it down. And then you just get better over time. The most important thing you should focus on. If you were expecting me to say plot or characters or world building, you should have figured that stuff out in the second draft. What you want to do in the third draft, and the 5th draft, and the 20th draft, is make sure you've got all the pieces working to the best of their individual ability and the best of their collective ability. So that every draft, however many you write, you can demonstrate that you've gotten better and better. Your voice is stronger, your writing is clearer, you're not making the same mistake 25 times. You're also not making brand new mistakes. You're just getting better every time. That's where your focus goes. Get better every time. First draft, okay, it's a first draft. They're garbage. They're supposed to be. It's totally fine. Encourage it, revel in it, party it up, rock on. First drafts are on purpose. Just a side note for the recording, and I think it really only falls to me because I'm reading the captions. Zoom, who's doing my captions right now, doesn't have a closed captioning for ugh. So I guess it's just YUCK with a couple emojis. You know, just ugh. Gross. That kind of sound. But you want your subsequent drafts, post first draft, to just keep getting better, to organize your ideas, to make those decisions, to clarify, to be better packaged. I am not saying that your third draft should be the draft you go query. Sometimes you need a fourth draft. Sometimes you need a fifth draft. Who knows? But every draft post second, this is the draft, man. You're getting it. This is the one. So if it is, great. And if it's not, great. The next draft's the one, man. You just keep going. That's where you put your focus. Great question. Oh no, I clicked the wrong thing. There we go. Question 9. How do I strengthen character agency? For the record, we all know what agency is, right? Assuming you've been coming to the Monday night stuff or you've been checking the Monday night streams out on YouTube, we've talked agency. But let's suppose for a minute this is your first time hearing this phrase. Agency is your character's ability to make decisions and take action for themselves, where they're not waiting for other people to lead or prompt them, where they're able to make a decision and follow it through themselves. You strengthen this, first and foremost, by having your character make decisions, plural, make decisions, and take actions. Rather than be told by somebody else what to do, rather than wait until everybody else is done and then do something insignificant, the character, this is especially double, super, mega, absolutely true for your point of view character, because it's generally the character we're talking about in terms of agency. Your point of view character, your protagonist, they should most definitely have agency. They should be doing stuff, taking action, making decisions, feeling feelings, saying words, doing stuff, so that the story moves forward as a result of their actions, as a result of their thinking, as a result of their decisions. They're driving the story. You strengthen that by having them make decisions and take actions. How else can you strengthen it? Reduce the number of secondary characters who do stuff for them. You see this with newer or inexperienced writers or writers with huge, giant ensembles. I'm looking at you, epic science fiction fantasy people. You guys love to do this. I'm going to have a giant, because you're going to see more of this as Wheel of Time, carries forward. I'm going to have a big, giant cast with a big, giant world, with a big, giant plot, with big, giant stuff, with everything big and giant and big, and it's big and it's giant. Over and over and over and over again. More characters does not always mean better story. In the hands of a writer who can't manage a large ensemble, who doesn't help give their characters distinction, Wormside. Yeah, I got to do that tomorrow for Patreon. That's a different discussion. Don't throw me off track yet. We're going to talk about Paul and Jessica in a Fantasy Kingdom later. We're not there yet. Don't throw me off, Sam. I'm on a roll here. Where was I? Right. So, big giant ensemble. If you can't make your characters distinct, and I can't, tell your characters apart, not just because of their big giant names, well, it's okay. I still love you, Sam. It's totally fine. Agency and agents. I know the word's the same, but we'll get there. Hang on, Rob. And then we'll talk about pimps, I promise. But agency. In big ensembles, so many writers have a real tendency to generate these secondary, subordinate, badass, cool characters with a troubled backstory and probably some amount of facial hair, where they're just taking action and doing stuff so that other people don't, because they really want to write that action scene where something cool happens. So we have the cool character, coolly do cool stuff, cool. Don't. Just don't. Reduce the number of people that complicate the story. I'm not saying boil the story down till it's just one person taking one action and calling it a day. I'm saying eliminate the extra, strange, unnecessary limbs of story and the strange buttresses and architecture of characters who don't really go anywhere, but you totally had to go write like a 7th or 8th different version of a Batman surrogate. You don't need all that. You want to build agency. Characters make decisions. Characters take actions. That's how you build agency. You would not, for example, craft in your story this big, giant, intergalactic space thing with an emperor, and then all of a sudden have them be defeated by just a dude who gets high on mushrooms. Because there's not really a whole lot of agency if I have to go out into the desert and my desert girlfriend and my mom have to do stuff so that I can remember to stick a thing up my nose so that I can do what destiny says I can do. Take that, worm sign. All right. That's how you build agency. Take actions, make decisions, clarify your story, eliminate giant ensembles. It makes the world a lot easier. There are other tricks, but that also comes from just building stronger characters to begin with. All right, I want to answer Rob's question, but I'm going to press this button because I'm pressing the button again. Because I'm going to talk to you about pimps. So let's suppose you are but a humble person, a regular Joe or Jane or Jim or whomever you might be, identifying however you might identify, all of which is valid and good. You might decide that you want to do something. I don't know what. Maybe you want to make cheese. Maybe you want to take pictures of your elbows on the internet and sell it for money. Maybe you want to teach a class. Maybe you want to show, maybe you want to write a story about how your great-grandparents were these people you really idolized. I don't know. You've got something to create. And you decide that you want to make your thing the best it can be. And part of your making it the best it can be, you decide that you need to broadcast it to a large group of people because that'll help, because you want a lot of attention. You want a lot of people to know this story, to know this thing. You want a lot of people to check out your sexy elbow photos. And you decide that after a little bit of research, you can get help with that, reaching these other people, facilitating these things, or you could do it yourself. And doing it yourself is great, but it's a little slower, and it's a bit more tedious, and it requires a bit more focus and a bit more time and patience. Or you could farm it out to these other people who, instead of just doing what you want to do the same way you would get if you hired, somebody to cut your hair and you tell them what you want and they cut your hair, you give your sense of control of the thing you want, your sexy elbow photos or your story about your grandparents or your cheese or whatever. You give control and even ownership over from you to these other people on the promise that what they're going to do is make sure to connect you with the same number of people you could have connected yourself with, except they did it in a magical, mysterious way because they had the email address and you would have had to look it up. And instead, for the very simple pleasure of getting on the phone or writing an email, all things you do all the time, they've decided that the money your sexy elbow photos or your cheese or your story about your grandparents would generate, they're taking some. They're going to take some. They're going to take some. And you're going to say, oh my God, well, that's just part of it because they made this possible. Psst, psst, over here. I need to remind you of something. They didn't make it possible. You wrote the story. You made it possible. All these people did was just open a few doors that you yourself could have opened if you knew the door was there in the first place. And how would we have known the door was there in the first place? We could have asked someone who's been through that door. But here we have this person. You're going to do all the work. They're going to take some money off the top, and they're going to call themselves a really big deal because of it. Look how successful I am. I have profited off the labor of someone else. You know what we call those people, Rob? We have a word for that in English. They're called pimps. Pimps. And they seek to prostitute our creative efforts. So I'm going to take your question, and I'm going to repeat it to you. How important are agents in the current writing industry? And also, great question. Thank you for asking. Also, by the way, just side note, if you do have sexy elbow photos, I guarantee you I can find you a buyer. I talked to somebody today who's totally into elbows. I got your back. I know. You're making a face. I know. I'll probably also should have clicked that button, but that's fine. Other questions, issues? Anyone? Not necessarily about sexy elbows. Let me scroll through and see if I got other stuff. Questions? Twitch? Zoom? YouTube? Yeah, send me the Dropbox link. I'll totally hook you up with an elbow enthusiast. Nice. Elbow enthusiast. Yeah. Cool. Cool. Yeah, you're going to love them. They're great people. Questions? Anybody? I just finished reading Dracula. Yes. Awesome. I'm so glad you read Dracula. I'm really happy for you. It's a great story. Do I have any other classic recommendations for you to check out? Do you mean classic recommendations specifically for you? Yes. Or do you mean just like classics in general? I'm going to give you 3. Okay? I'm going to give you 3 especially for you. For you. Here we go. 3 things for you. Ready? Here we go. I'd like you to read The Count of Monte Cristo. Okay? 2. I would like you to read Treasure Island. Okay? 3. Ready? Third one. I'd like you to read Jaws. So let's go over that list one more time. Count of Monte Cristo, Treasure Island, Jaws. If we're looking for authors, that's Alexander Dumas, Robert Louis Stevenson, Peter Benchley. Okay? I understand that Jaws is not the same kind of classic the way that Treasure Island or The Count of Monte Cristo is. But for you, specifically for you, because you asked, those are 3 books that have lessons that will help you do what I know you are doing. I really hope you liked Dracula. Good. Yes. Treasure Planet, Disney's Treasure Planet, excellent. Jaws, fantastic. Book versions, very, very good. And I'm so glad you found Dracula to be interesting. Because it is. I could probably do an entire Monday night stream just on Dracula. And Treasure Planet was grossly underrated. Oh, criminally underrated. Are annotated novels a good investment? I like annotated Dracula. I think so. I find them interesting. I have quite a few annotated things. I find it very interesting, both from I like to read things, but also I can turn it around and turn it into teaching stuff. I think they're worth it. They're also like generally well made. Like they are physically, visually interesting with some high level craftsmanship and interesting layouts. An annotated novel is a novel generally printed in a larger format that has a lot of footnotes and secondary notes and chapter notes and marginalia, and it's the novel embellished with extra material, usually relative to the stuff you're reading. Like in chapter 2, they break down the scenes, or they show photos, or they describe things better, or they talk about how this used to be chapter 3. It helps give a more complete big picture beyond just the novel. It's sort of like reading a novel with the director's commentary track on, which is why I like them. Because I am from the old days when I would buy DVDs entirely and solely because they had a cool director commentary track. So yes, I think they're totally worth it. I think they're a great investment. Yeah, you can. So if you use the website named after the giant river, you can find quite a few copies of Annotated Dracula is excellent. Annotated Sherlock Holmes, phenomenal. Annotated Frankenstein's not bad. Annotated Sandman is, depending on if you're a fantasy person, I think Annotated Sandman and all that stuff is required because it's just pretty and the stories are awesome and more of that's always good. I think it's really... I think they're excellent. I think they're great resources. If I had a choice, have I ever read S? No, I have not read S. I've never even heard. Why is my nemesis J.J. Abrams writing novels now? How dare he? For those who don't know, again, go jump on the Patreon. When I talked about, when I did the Star Wars series, J.J. and I even did it in Star Trek. J.J. Abrams became my nemesis because when I ran into a storytelling problem and I did some research on it, 99% of the time it was a J.J. Abrams decision. So yes, he is my nemesis. I've declared it. If he wants to show up one day into one of these chats, I would be happy to, go toe to toe. It's incredibly great until the ending, then it's a huge letdown. Well, that sounds like a J.J. Abrams product. Okay, I understand. Are they dead the whole time and they're really just in purgatory? Or is it we have our one character of color and he's really a Jedi, but we're going to ignore that because Rian Johnson scared us when all our classic heroes aged? Or is it that we can't just keep having Jennifer Garner wear wigs and funny outfits? We actually have to try and move the story, but I don't know how. Is Felicity going to change her hair again? Are we going to just potentially make a good Star Trek movie and then sort of step on it for a while? There's one way to solve it, Hell in a Cell. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I would do the high spot off the cell if it meant I could, get over on JJ. I super would. Yes. So, yeah. But I've not read S, and I'm very sorry it was disappointing. But given that the word J.J. Abrams appears in your question, I'm not surprised. Good stuff. Other questions, issues, etc. I'm really bothered that he wrote a novel. Yes, assuming that's a wrestling reference. So a Hell in a Cell. Imagine a big giant metal cage, all four sides of a ring and a roof. And in that cage, in theory, anything goes. And a high spot in a cage. I wish Jeff was here. In a high spot, that's where somebody does something very risky and very jumpy and flippy and folly and dangerous-y. It's the big sort of gasp moment. Oh my God, no, not that. Wow. That's a high spot. I would do a high spot, meaning I would take that risk, provided it meant I could go over, get the win, over J.J. Abrams. Maybe one Monday night I should just do wrestling references, because I make a ton of them. It was pointed out to me in the last 2 or 3 Patreon things. I make a ton of these things, and I just assume everybody knows what I'm talking about. I should probably cover that at some point. Oh my God, thank you for cheering me getting over on JJ. I think Doug Dorst wrote the book, and then JJ came around and said, your ending is too satisfying. Let's have the characters give up. Total JJ move. Total JJ move. That reminds me of the what's called the Patterson franchise rule, which is something we don't talk nearly enough about. So James Patterson, by all accounts, has in his life been talented. He has written, by all accounts, some very successful, very good stories. But lately, he's decided he's going to take his name and trade on his name, and that's fine, that's his choice. But he's decided he's going to take his name and trade on his name and attach it to other people's stuff. Not necessarily to steal it, but to lend these people his name, his cachet, and get some boost, which is fine. Except some of those books are not great, and that's putting it very mildly. So I am leery, very leery, of the two, famous person and other guy writing strategy. Now, granted, just because I'm me, I'm going to say this, make this clear. If a big famous person was to come to me and go, hey, I want to do a thing with you, yeah, I'd do it. I need the work and the money. But honestly, I'm always a little suspect. I'm really sorry that JJ tanked Doug's book. That sounds like a bummer. All right. Shall we move on? I think we should move on. Question 10. I've waited all day for this question. How do I break the habit of using questions in pitches? So the other day on the internet, there was this, what do I want to call it this time? Contest. There was a contest where the prize of the contest was you won the chance to have someone read your things, which is, of course, as we know, the exact same prize you get if you weren't in the contest. But there was a contest, and it required loads of people creating tons of pitches and using a hashtag in the hashtag writing community to put these things across. And after a while, you started to see people, what's the best word I could use here? Fumbling their way through, because I'm on YouTube, so I can't swear as much as I would if it was just Monday night. Fumbling their way through pitches, and there's a very common habit, especially with inexperienced people who are pitching or new pitchers or people who are just kind of like, I'm throwing everything at the wall and whatever works, kind of pitching, where they frame things as questions like this. Can Diane fall in love with a shellfish? What will happen when the princess realizes there's another horse? Or any other kind of question, that's supposed to be this sort of like big momentous thing where you read it and you kind of want to go like, because they're kind of goofy questions. A question with its own baked in dun 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 is not necessarily the right kind of question to frame a pitch in. Like we don't always want to lead up to a dun 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 because you want to instead provoke or encourage the reader of that pitch to take action. It's a call to action. We talked about this on Monday. It's a call to action. So we break the habit with by not using questions, by instead being very clear about our story. When we use so many questions, especially when the questions find their way to the back half of a pitch, it comes across as indecisive, as if you don't fully know your own story, which is a problem because presumably you wrote your own story. And if you don't know your story, who's going to? We break the habit of asking questions by taking the same idea that we're posing in the question and framing it as a sentence that's just open-ended. So if we have a question like, can Diane fall in love with the shellfish? We might say something like, Diane will have to learn to break through her own crustacean. Nope, that's a terrible pun. Let's do something different. Diane will have to learn that in order to love, she can't be the shellfish one. There we go. I'm happy with that one. That's clever. You take the same idea that you would frame as a question in the hopes that the question would make somebody go, oh, I have to keep reading. Please tell me more. And you frame it as a sentence so that it sounds, my man, so that your sentence sounds more affirming and concrete and declarative. Because a declarative sentence in a pitch where you're definitely saying something and you're definitely going out on a limb and you're definitely organizing your thoughts, and you've done that before, it's going to come across way more confident and way more effective than if we're always sort of, just barely parsing out questions. Well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this and that? Step up to it. Give your pitch. Be certain. You don't have to spoil. This is not about spoilers. This is just about the presentation method, how you're getting your idea across. Would you like a good tool to help you get better at making pitches? It's great. Go listen to the Wu-Tang Clan. Go listen to the Wu-Tang Clan. You have multiple people coming into one track in multiple different directions, and they're all confident. And if you take it apart and you look at just one individual section and then another individual section, see how they compete, see how they bump against each other, see how they feed into each other, etc., that kind of confidence and assertiveness without ever screaming outright that I'm better than you overtly with no variation is the kind of confidence you need when you pitch, so that you don't have to come and kind of hang on the old training wheels that questions in a pitch can be. I mean, it's also the Wu-Tang Clan. Like, come on. It's the Wu-Tang Clan. How could you not want to listen to them? They're great. But you want to break that habit by just demonstrating more assertiveness, more confidence, and more knowledge of your own piece. Great question. Question number 11. How late is too late to introduce a character? Okay. Yes, there is a too late. Now, in screenwriting and playwriting and a number of other sources, there's a rule called no drive-ups in the third act. What does that mean? So that means you don't want to introduce a character so close to the climax that they overshadow everything else you've built up. Because that new character with that new introduction is going to steal the spotlight and steal reader attention away from everything else. And this is especially true when the character you introduce all of a sudden dominates the story. You want to avoid that at all costs, because the characters we've been following prior to that introduction are the ones we're invested in. They're the ones who we should be following handle this event in the story, whatever it might be. The no drive up in the third act, no immediate pre-climax forward new characters. Everybody should be on the board. Everybody should be there by the time the climax goes is a completely okay rule. I think it's still a little vague, because I'm going to tell you to push back even further. I'm going to say you should be done introducing characters by about the midway point of your second act. Give or take a little bit of wiggle room. The majority of your characters should be there, presented. And I'm not, okay, look, so I know I'm going to get this question. What if I have a series and I have all these characters planned? I'm not talking about your series. I mean, in this one particular book, in this one particular manuscript, get every piece on the board before the story really starts to ramp up towards that climax. What about antagonistic characters like a Mr. Big at the end? That's a fantastic question. Okay. Mr. Big should already be present in the story, even if Mr. Big is not ultimately directly observed. Example. The Emperor in Star Wars, before we get to the sequel trilogy and he's weird and awful, the good Emperor. the Emperor's presence is felt before he shows up to kind of mainstream in the third movie. He's there in dialogue. He's there in vague scenes. He's there as a threat. He's there as a menace. Your Mr. Big, your giant antagonist, looms throughout the story. It's just that when he finally gets the reveal, he's been in the story the whole time. That's what's going to help make the Mr. Big reveal, and therefore the confrontation, feel earned. Because it's not totally coming out of the blue like, who's that guy? How long have they been here? Some impact. That character has had an impact somewhere in the story up to this point. They were the mastermind who sent the 5 other goons. That kind of thing. Your big antagonist, for whatever reason, has been puppeteering everything. They've been, it's your end-of-level boss sending out your goons and your sub-bosses, and now the only thing to do is to do it themselves. And that's how you get the reveal. You don't pull it out of nowhere, because if you do, then it feels like, well, I don't know what's going on. It doesn't feel earned. We want to make sure stuff feels earned with an antagonist. But that's different than introducing that character. Don't confuse revealing the character with introducing them. Introducing just means you're making the story and other characters aware of them. Revealing them is sort of like spotlighting them. Finding out all along that they were the ones behind the scenes. And, that's where you get your double cross or your twists or your, shocking revelations that your twin sister is actually a clone and she's half robot and she's coming to destroy you. Something like that. Reveal and introduction, not the same thing. Don't make them the same thing. Introduction should be done before the second act really ramps up so that you have the most amount of story space to ramp things up and build towards climax. Give yourself the most runway you can to make the climax as big and impactful as you want. Great questions. Awesome stuff. Are we ready for the last one? Yeah. The last question of the night? Oh, man. Killing it. Here we go. I'm going to get actually a mouthful of tea first. That's better. And I just want to say thank you for being here. You guys are amazing. I love this. Awesome. All right. Let's go hit this last question. Oh my God, it's gentle advice. Gentle advice. Can you help me with my writer's block? Yeah, totally I can help you with writer's block. I've got a couple things to say on this point. First of all, let's get the business stuff out of the way. If you want to spend an hour talking to me about your writer's block and what to do about it, I would love to have that conversation anytime. You can jump on the website, writernextdoor.com, and you can book an appointment with me where I will be more than happy to talk to you about writer's block in specific and what you can do specifically to deal with it. Okay? That's the business stuff. Get that out of the way. Now we're going to just speak as friends. Yes. Yes, I can absolutely help you with your writer's block. I just need to know if your writer's block is caused by expectation or decision paralysis or some other kind of anxiety. Because some other kind of anxiety outside the realm of what the story could be or what it's supposed to be or how you feel about it, that's not my bag. That's other people's stuff. And there's nothing wrong with seeking other kinds of help for things like major anxiety or other personal issues. That's not my thing. I can help you find some people to talk to, but on that level, outside of the writing, that's not a thing I can do. What I can do is cover the two parts that most frequently pertain to the writing. One, writer's block caused by decision paralysis, and two, writer's block caused by expectation. Now we're going to take decision paralysis first. Decision paralysis is the idea that you don't know what's supposed to happen next. Lots of things could happen. Loads of stuff could happen. Could go this way, could go that way, A, B, C, loads of different choices. I don't know what to choose. And we're going to make that distinct from what you think other people want you to choose. We're going to put that to the side. We're going to come back to that one. That's later. But for now, it just comes down to the fact that you have choices to make and you've not made them. First of all, it's okay that you've not made them, but now we're at a point where we're going to make them. And this is really important, so I'm going to move closer to the microphone, and I need you to move closer to the speaker. This is really important. You cannot make a wrong choice. There is no wrong choice. Why? Because you're the author. You're writing the story. If you choose, if there's a fork in the road and you choose left, left was the correct choice. Now, whether that means it was the correct choice for the characters to get the outcome they want, that's a different issue. But you, the writer, you can never be wrong within your own story. Any decision you make in your story that keeps your story moving forward is a good choice. Now, as to the specifics, as to the how do we connect all these dots now that we've gone left and it opens this and closes this and brings this option up and all that, that's for editing to deal with. That's a developmental conversation. That's a different issue. Because if we're already talking about how things play out after the choice, we are past the writer's block issue. But right now, when it comes to decision paralysis, I need you to know that you are the most powerful being in this whole equation, and you can just choose things. Whatever you choose is going to be fine. There is no perfect. Remember, there's no perfect. There's never going to be a perfect. It's just what we're choosing right now for this moment. So conceptually, in the moment, it's totally perfect. But big picture, it's just what we need right now. Every choice is the right one. So just pick one. Which one excites you? Which one interests you? Maybe you want to work the other way and go, which one just annoys you or bores you? Don't pick that one then. Just pick one. It's going to be fine. Really. Writer's block, when there's decision paralysis, generally comes from a log jam mentally where, you've got this one choice to make, but you're busy thinking about steps, like this is step 2, and you're busy thinking about like step 10 and 22 and 57 and 75. You're way down the road. So you haven't made a choice in the present moment. And I'm asking you, just make this choice. We're on step 2. What comes after step 2 is step 3. Step 75 is down there. We're going to get there eventually. Don't you worry. But for now, we're just going from 2 to 3. We're just making a choice right here. Just simplify that down. Just that choice. I know. There's a load of other things. There's going to be a load of other choices. But right now, focus on just the one. Make a decision here. And then we'll go to the next one. And then we'll make a decision there. And we'll just keep making simple decisions. Because we can always go back and make another draft, right? We can always go back and edit things. We can always hash out some more ideas. We can always brainstorm some more stuff. That's totally fine. But we can't do any of that until you just make a choice here, and it's a choice you can never make wrong. You cannot screw this up because you're in charge. If you say it's this way, then that's the way it is. And if we need to change it later, well, hey, we need to change it later. That's fine, but it's not later yet. It's right now. It's now. So we just need to work now. Then will be now later. And I will totally rip off Spaceballs for that. But if you've got an issue where you just need to make a decision, make a decision. Don't worry about the stuff down the road. Don't worry about, well, if I do this here, what am I going to do, 10 chapters from now? That's 10 chapter from now's you problem. Longhand writing about the scene I'm blocked on, talking out loud to myself and on paper often helps. Absolutely. The more abstract, can I use that word? The more abstract, the more detached your view can be very helpful in sort of figuring out, okay, so if I make this choice, what does that do? How do the dominoes topple? Which way does the wind blow? That kind of thing. Decision paralysis comes from looking at the decision, not the potential stakes, not the ramifications, not the big long-term, big picture stuff. It just comes down to, okay, I got to make a decision right here. And I can't make it wrong. I just got to make a decision. So whatever you need to do, whatever writing you need to do, talking to yourself, pace around the room, pet a cat, go look at sexy elbow photos, play a video game, eat some cheese, watch birds fly. I don't know. Whatever you need to do to help facilitate you making a choice, do. And you're going to be just fine. That's part number one. That's the first kind of very common writer's block. Here comes the second. Remember we talked before about worrying about what other people would like? That's the second kind of writer's block. Writer's block by expectation. If you ever want to watch a writer just spiral like a gyroscope, get them thinking and talking about expectations. You will paralyze people because they're going to start thinking outside themselves and they're going to start what-ifing and could and should and would all over the place. Well, what if I pick this and they don't like it? What if I write this thing and then I don't get a good review? What if I do this and I get rejected? What do I do? Like I made this choice in the chapter and then it's not selling and that's the whole reason. And so many things become so conditional, but yet at the same time so entirely related and dependent on one another. Because expectation, trying to guess what somebody else will like and give it to them, trying to people please at a distance, trying to people please in literally a different time and space, because the reader reading your book isn't reading it at the same time you're writing it. So you were trying to people please in the future. Man, that sounds exhausting. But there you are, trying to preemptively guess, trying to outfox somebody who doesn't know they need to be foxed in the first place. You're trying to guess what they want and give it to them. And we are people of tremendous skill and ability. We have been to the moon. We have put things on, dishwashers on comets. We have figured out how to take very HD photos of naked people. Like, we're really creative humans. But to the best of my knowledge, we have never unlocked the ability to forecast the future. So if you can see in the future and know exactly what somebody wants, I have many, many questions. But if you don't have that power, I need to tell you that trying to preempt everybody's expectations and writing and creating out of a place of satisfying those expectations is going to lead to disaster. Because at the heart of all those things is the assumption you've made that something is an expectation. So let me tell you this, and let me be very clear about this. What the reader wants is your story told well. Your story. You make the decisions. They come to a book, whomever they might be, whether they're the most jaded troll or the most open-minded fan, they come to this book wanting a story. They're either going to find it or they're going to find reasons to deny that it exists. Meaning they're going to come in with their own baggage and say, oh, well, this isn't what I wanted, so I'm giving it 1 star. Or they're going to come and be open-minded and go, I didn't know what to expect, and I liked this. You don't have to try and make everybody happy. You don't have to try and guess what everybody's into. You don't have to try and, be the one who makes everybody satisfied with your work. All you need to do is just make the choice that you want to make. If you were the reader and you didn't know the lore, you didn't know the backstory, but if you were reading this book that somebody else wrote, right? What would you like? Because it's okay to advocate for yourself. It's okay to say nice things. It's okay to act in your own interest. It's not selfish or bad or wrong to say, like, I totally want X to happen, and then X happens. Expectation leads you away from a sort of mainstream, main line of creativity. And I say mainstream not because of trends or anything, but just the general current of the river of creativity. You start detouring into expectation, you're no longer moving with that sort of liquid flow of idea to production to excitement. You don't have to make anybody else happy except you. And I think for a lot of us, myself included, that becomes very difficult because we seldom let ourselves really be happy. I can tell you right now, I'm not happy today, and there's a load of reasons, none of which are your fault and none of which are because of this chat. It's just, that's just who I am and how I am on the day. But you out there listening to this, when you're writing, you don't have to try and make everybody happy. You don't have to guess what everybody would want and then try to give it to them. You are providing a thing that they're going to want. You're giving them the story. It's up to them to decide if they like it or not. Just like if you go look at a picture or if you go put the TV on and you find a show, it's not the show's fault that you don't like it. It's not, the show wasn't made specifically with you in mind. The show was made and it's up to you to interpret whether or not you like it. It's a choice. So when you're creating, put yourself first. What would I like? If I'm my reader, what would I like? Start there. That'll get you through the first draft. That'll get you even into the second draft. And then once we get past second draft and we're starting to make sure all the pieces are clicking together, remember that earlier question from like an hour ago? When all the pieces are starting to click together, then we can start tinkering. Then we can start saying, well, what's the best presentation of all these ideas? And maybe along the way, we'll make smaller decisions to affect things. And, we'll hammer the whole thing out and build it till it's smooth. But for now, we need to abandon the expectations by the side of the road because they're not helping us. We need to jettison them. We need to boot them out the airlock. It just doesn't need to be there. And if you're jammed up about expectation, there's one more expectation I want to talk to you about before we go tonight. You might be the one with the expectation that a book has to look a certain way or be a certain size or get a certain reception or be published in a certain way or be represented by a certain pimp or managed by a different company or it has to be done at a certain rate or it has to be produced by a certain time and it has to be a certain level of quality at a certain moment. Like my first draft must be flawless or I need this done in 60 days because I need to beat somebody else, or I don't want to have to take forever and it's all or nothing. You might be the one carrying expectations that are like an anchor dragging you down. I can't say for certain if that's true. If you want to hash that out, come talk to me. I'm more than happy to have a conversation. But if you're the one carrying those expectations, because you think that's what you need to have in order to be an author, or in order to be legit, or be valid, or be good enough, or earn the praise of people who will probably never give you that praise, or whatever. You're not hurting anybody but you. And I'm really sorry that you're suffering. But when it comes to writer's block and expectation, like taking off a pair of shoes after a long day, or, as I've been told, taking off a bra after a very long day. There is a sense of relief when you shed expectation. And I hope those things, I hope that 10 minutes really help you figure out your writer's block and help you find a solution through to wherever it is you want to go. Thank you for your question. All right. Last call for questions, else we will go to the outro. That wasn't my question, but hearing that was very helpful. You are very, very welcome. No, I'm pretty sure I know who asked me that question. And I don't think they're here. But all the same, I am always glad to talk about it. In fact, I'm 99% certain they're not here. But I'm always happy to talk something through. Other questions, issues, comments, etc. Else, we will go to the outro. I do want to do a quick bit of housekeeping before we outro. Cool? Just that way I don't have to race against the theme music. Patreon this week gets Dune, the new one with Willy Wonka. And then the week after, Tombstone, the Val Kilmer Western. And then we'll go from there. The Office is closed for half of Friday. Friday morning I'm closed. I'm opening 1-ish, 2-ish. Mainly because I've got some other stuff going on and I just won't be around. Beyond that, I'm here. And I'm around for appointments, editing, consultation, meetings, hanging out, whatever. That's all the housekeeping I've got. Cool. If you liked the graphics, by the way, let me know. I know it's just text. I know it's just plain, but to me, it's a real big step forward because we're not just staring at a blank screen. Go me. All right. I think we're going to the outro. To the outro. Oh, man. Heck of a night. Loved this. This was great. Made me happy. Made me very happy. Made me happy to be here. I'm very, very thankful for you being here. It means the world to me yet again. You guys absolutely positively save my life. Week in, week out, you guys are the best. This will be, and it already is, and it's on its way to growing, the greatest writing resource and community ever, everywhere. So thank you. I genuinely appreciate you being here. I loved your questions. I love the conversation. Thank you for letting me dunk on JJ. Thank you for letting me talk about James Patterson. Thank you for letting me talk about pimps and sexy elbows. Man, this really made me happy. This really picked up my day. I am ever indebted to all of you. The next time I will be right here. The next time I'm here is Monday. Oh God, is Monday November? It is. It is November the 1st. Monday night, I will be streaming here, 7 p.m. Eastern, about, I don't know, something. We'll figure that out. And then, of course, next week on the 3rd, so November 3rd, will be the next Writer's Chat right here. If you love this, if this was great, and you're not already subscribed, please feel free to at least follow. It's free. If you definitely want to see more stuff like this happen and see more graphics and see more everything, the 2 things you can do, feel free to subscribe. It's easy. If not, and you want to support this in loads of other ways, the best thing you can do, like I said at the beginning, go jump on the Patreon, patreon.com/John helps you create. It literally funds everything. So until then, friends, all power to all people. Wash your hands, take care of other people, be kind, be good, be loving. Know that I care about you. I really do love you. You guys mean everything. You're awesome. And I will talk to you guys very, very soon. See ya!